My name is Mia again, and today we're finally starting the actual series of House of Night. The first book I read was the student handbook, but today I'm actually going to start the series. The first book is called Marked, and I know you're probably wondering, well, why don't you have the book in your hand? Well, I can't find it, so I had to buy it online. I ordered, I ordered a new copy of the book, so I will have the in-hand book probably by the second or third video. But as of now, I'm reading it from online. I'm wearing my crazy funny wig, and that's what's happening. So let's get into it. Okay, give me a second, guys. Athena, can you close this door, baby? Can you close this door? I'm about to start reading, baby. Thank you. Now, let's get started. I got my handy dandy water when my throat starts to get dry. Chapter 1. Just when I thought my day couldn't get any worse, I saw the dead guy standing next to my locker. Kayla was talking nonstop in her usual K-babble, and she didn't even notice him at first. Actually, now that I think about it, no one else noticed him until he spoke, which is tragically more evidence of my freakish inability to fit in. No, but Zoe, I swear to God, he did not get drunk after the game. You really shouldn't be so hard on him. Yeah, I said absently. Sure. Then I coughed. Again, I felt like crap. I must be coming down with what Mr. Wise, my more than slightly insane AP biology teacher, called the teenage plague. If I died, would it get me out of my geometry test tomorrow? One could only hope. Zoe, please, are you even listening? I think he only had like four, I don't know, maybe 6 beers, and maybe like 3 shots. But that's totally beside the point. He probably wouldn't even have had hardly any if your awful parents hadn't made you go home right after the game. We shared a long suffering look in total agreement about the last injustice committed against me by my mom and the step loser she'd married 3 really long years ago. Then, after barely half a breath break, Kay was back with the babbling. Plus, he was celebrating. I mean, we beat Union. Kay shook my shoulder and put her face close to mine. Hello, your boyfriend. My almost boyfriend. I corrected her, trying my best not to cough on her. Whatever. Heath is our quarterback, so of course he's going to celebrate. It's been like a million years since Broken Arrow beat Union. 16. I'm crappy at math, but Kay's math impairment makes me look like a genius. Again, whatever. The point is, he was happy. You should give the boy a break. The point is that he was wasted for like the 5th time this week. I'm sorry, but I don't want to go out with a guy whose main focus in life has changed from trying to play college football to trying to chug a 6-pack without puking. I had to pause to cough. I was feeling a little dizzy and forced myself to take a slow, deep breaths when the coughing fit was over. Not that K-Babble noticed. Ew, Heath, puking is not a visual I want. I managed to ignore another urge to cough, and kissing him is like sucking on alcohol-soaked feet. Kay crushed up her face. Okay, sick. Too bad he's so hot. I rolled my eyes, not even bothering to try to hide the annoyance at her typical shallowness. You're so grumpy when you're sick. Anyway, you have no idea how lost puppy-like Heath looked after you ignored him at lunch. He couldn't even... Then I saw him. The dead guy. Okay, I realized pretty quick that he wasn't technically dead. He was undead. Or unhuman. Whatever. Scientists say one thing, people say another, but the end result was the same. There was no mistaking what he was, and even if I hadn't felt the power that radiated from him, there was no friggin' way I could miss his mark. The sapphire blue crescent moon on his forehead and the additional tattooing of entwining knotwork that framed his equally blue eyes. He was a vampire, or worse. And worse, he was a tracker. Well, crap, he was standing by my locker. Zoe, you're so not listening to me. When the vampire spoke, his ceremonial words slicked across the space between us, dangerous and seductive like blood mixed with melted chocolate. Zoe Montgomery, night has chosen thee. Thy death will be thy birth. Night calls thee. Hearken to her sweet voice. Your destiny awaits you at the house of night. He lifted one long white finger and pointed it at me. As my forehead exploded in pain, Kayla opened her mouth and screamed. When the bright splotches finally cleared from my eyes, I looked up to see Kay's colorless face staring down at me. As usual, I said the first ridiculous thing that came to mind. Kay, your eyes are popping out of your head like a fish. He marked you. Oh, Zoe, you have the outline of that thing on your forehead. Then she pressed the shaking hand against her white lips, unsuccessfully trying to hold back a sob. I sat up and coughed. I had a killer headache and I rubbed at the spot right between my eyebrows. It stung as if a wasp had bit me and radiated pain down around my eyes, all the way across my cheeks. I felt like I might puke. Zoe! Kay was really crying now and had to speak between little wet hiccups. Oh my god, that guy was a tracker. A vampire tracker. Kay, I blinked hard, trying to clear the pain from my head. Stop crying. You know I hate it when you cry. I reached out to attempt a comforting pat on her shoulders. She automatically cringed and moved away from me. I couldn't believe it. She actually cringed, like she was afraid of me. She must have seen the hurt in my eyes because she instantly started a string of breathless K-babble. Oh my god, Zoe, what are you going to do? You can't go to that place. You can't be one of those things. This can't be happening. Who am I supposed to go to all of her football games with? I noticed that all during her tirade, she didn't once move any closer to me. I clamped down on the sick, hurt feeling inside that threatened to make me burst into tears. My eyes dried instantly. I was good at hiding tears. I should be. I'd had 3 years to get good at it. It's okay. I'll figure this out. It's probably some bizarre mistake. I lied. I wasn't really talking. I was just making words come out of my mouth. Still grimacing at the pain in my head, I stopped. I stood up. Looking around, I felt a small measure of relief that Kay and I were the only ones in the math hall, and then I had to choke back what I knew was hysterical laughter. Had I not been totally worried about the geometry test from hell scheduled for tomorrow and had ran back to my locker to get my book so I could attempt to obsessively and pointlessly study tonight, the tracker would have found me standing outside in front of the school with the majority of the 1,300 kids who went to Broken Arrow's South Intermediate High School waiting for what my Barbie clone sister liked to smugly call the big yellow limos. I have a car. But standing around with the less fortunate who have to ride the buses is a time honored tradition, not to mention an excellent way to check out who's hitting on who. As it was, there was only one other kid in the mess hall. A tall, thin guy with messed up teeth, which I could unfortunately see too much of because he was standing there with his mouth flapping open, staring at me like I'd just given birth to a litter of flying pigs. I coughed again. This time, a really wet, disgusting cough. The kid made a squeaky little sound and scuttled down the hall to Mrs. Day's room, clutching a flat board to his bony chest. Guess the chess club had managed its meeting time to Monday after school. Do vampires play chess? Were there vampire nerds? How about vampire cheerleaders? Did any vampires play in band? Were there? Or were they all those goth kids whose wardrobe was predominantly black? Was I going to turn into a goth kid? I didn't particularly like wearing black, at least not exclusively, and I wasn't feeling a sudden desire to change my hairstyle and wear extra eyeliner. All this whirled through my mind, while I felt another little hysterical bubble of laughter try to escape from my throat, and was almost thankful when it came out as a cough instead. Zoe, are you okay? Kayla's voice sounded too high, like someone was pinching her, and she'd taken another step away from me. I sighed and felt my first silver of anger. It wasn't like I'd asked for this. Kay and I had been best friends since the third grade, and now she was looking at me like I'd turned into a monster. Kayla, it's just me. The same me who I was 2 seconds ago, and 2 hours ago, and 2 days ago. I made a frustrated groan toward my throbbing head. This doesn't change who I am. Kay's eyes teared up again, but thankfully her cell phone started singing Madonna's Material Girl. Automatically, she glanced at the car ID. I could tell by her rabbit in the headlights expression that it was her boyfriend, Jared. Go on, I said in a flat, tired voice. Ride home with him. Her look of relief was like a slap in my face. Call me later, she threw over my shoulder, and she beat a hasty retreat outside the door. I watched her rush across the east lawn to the parking lot. I could see that she had her phone smashed to her ear and was talking in animated little bursts to Jared. I'm sure she was already telling him that I was turning into a monster. Problem, of course, was that turning into a monster was the brighter of my two choices. Choice number one, I turn into a vampire, which equals a monster in just about any human's mind. Number two, my body rejects the change and I die. Forever. So good news is that I wouldn't have to take the geometry test tomorrow. The bad news is that I'd have to move into the House of Night, a private boarding school in Tulsa's Midtown, known by all my friends as the Vampire Finishing School, where I would spend the next 4 years going through bizarre and unnameable physical changes, as well as a total and permanent life shakeup. And that's only if the whole process didn't kill me. Great. I didn't want to die either. I just wanted to attempt to be normal. Despite the burden of my mega conservative parents and my troll like younger brother and my oh so perfect older sister, I wanted to pass geometry. I wanted to keep my grades up so that I could get accepted into the veterinary college at OSU and get out of Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. But most of all, I wanted to fit in, at least in school. Home had become hopeless. All I had left with were my friends in my school. Now that they were being taken away from me, too. I rubbed my forehead and then messed with my hair until it semi covered my eyes, and with any luck, the mark that had appeared above them. Keeping my ducked head down, like I was fascinated with the goo that had somehow formed in my purse, I hurried toward the door that led to the student parking lot. But I stopped short of going outside. Through the side by side windows in the institution, no looking door, I could see Heath. Girls flocking around him, posing and flipping their hair, while guys revved ridiculously big pickup trucks and tried, but mostly failed, to look cool. Doesn't it figure that I would choose that to be attracted to? No, to be fair. To myself, I should remember that Heath used to be incredibly sweet, and even now had his moments, mostly when he bothered to be sober. High-pitched girl giggles fitted to me from the parking lot. Great, Kathy Richer was pretending to smack Heath. Even from where I was standing, it was obvious that she was hitting him with some kind of mating ritual. As usual, clueless Heath was just standing there grinning. Well, hey, my day wasn't going to get any better. And there sat my Robin's Egg Blue 1966 VW Bug right in the middle of them. No, I couldn't go out there. I couldn't walk into the middle of all of them with this thing on my forehead. I'd never be able to be a part of them again. I was already knew too well what they'd do. I remembered the last kid a tracker had chose. It happened at the beginning of the school year. The tracker had come before school started and had targeted the kid as he was walking into his first hour. I didn't see the tracker, but I did see the kid afterward. For just a second after he dropped his books and ran out of the building. His new mark glowing on his pale forehead, tears washing down his white cheeks. I never forget how crowded the halls had been that morning, and how everyone had backed away from him like he had the plague as he rushed to escape out the front doors of the school. I had been one of those kids who had backed out of his way and stared, even though I felt really sorry for him. I just hadn't wanted to be labeled as that one girl who's friends with those freaks. Sort of ironic now, isn't it? Instead of going to my car, I headed for the nearest restroom, which was thankfully empty. There were 3 stalls. Yes, I double-checked each for feet. On one wall, there were 2 sinks, over which hung 2 medium-sized mirrors. Across from the sinks, the opposite wall was covered with a huge mirror that had a ledge below it for holding brushes and makeup and whatnot. I put my purse and my geometry book on the ledge, took a deep breath, and in one motion lifted my head and brushed back my hair. It was like staring into the face of a familiar stranger. You know, that person you see in a crowd and you swear you know, but you really don't? Now she was me, the familiar stranger. She had my eyes. They were the same hazel color that could never decide whether it wanted to be green or brown, but my eyes had never been that big and round. Or had they? She had my hair, long and straight, almost as dark as my grandma's had been before hers had begun to turn silver. The stranger had my high cheekbones, long, strong nose, and wide mouth, more features from my grandma and her Cherokee ancestors. But my face had never been that pale. I'd always been darker skinned than anyone else in my family, but maybe it wasn't my skin. Maybe it wasn't that my skin was suddenly so white. Maybe it just looked pale in comparison to the dark blue outline of the crescent moon that was perfectly poised, positioned in the middle of my forehead. Or maybe it was the horrid fluorescent lighting. I hoped it was the lighting. I stared at the tattoo. It changed me. Made me made it seem as if I belonged to time when the world was bigger, more mysterious. From this day on, my life would never be the same. And for that, a moment, just an instant, I forgot about the horror of not belonging and felt a shocking burst of pleasure, while deep inside of me, the blood of my grandmother's people rejoiced. Chapter 2. When I figured that enough time had passed for everyone to have left school, I flopped my hair back over my forehead and left the bathroom, hurrying to the doors that led to the student parking lot. Everything seemed all clear. There was just some random kid cutting across the far end of the lot, keeping his pants from falling down as he was taking all the taking all his concentration. He wouldn't even notice me. I gritted my teeth against the throbbing pain in my head and bolted out the door, heading for my little bug. The moment I stepped outside, the sun began to batter me. I mean, it wasn't a particularly sunny day. There were plenty of those big puffy clouds that looked so pretty in pictures floating around the sky, semi-blocking the sun. But that didn't matter. I had to squint my eyes painfully to hold my hands up and make believe sunblock against even that intermittent light. I guess it was because I was focusing so hard on the pain the ordinary sun was causing me that I didn't notice the truck until it squealed to stop in front of me. Hey Zoe, didn't you get my message? Oh crap, 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 it was Heath. I glanced up, looking at him from between my fingers, like I was watching one of those scary slasher movies. He was sitting on the open tailgate of his friend Dustin's pickup truck. Over his shoulder, I could see the cab of the truck where Dustin and his brother Drew were doing what they were usually doing, wrestling around and arguing over God only knows what ridiculous boy thing. Thankfully, they were ignoring me. I glanced back at Heath and sighed. He had a beer in his hand and a goofy grin on his face. Momentarily forgetting that I'd just been marked and was destined to become an outcast, blood-sucking monster, I scowled at Heath. You're drinking at school? Are you crazy? His little boy grin got bigger. Yes, I am crazy. Bow you, baby. I shook my head while I turned back to him, opening the creaky door of my bug and shoving my books and backpack into the passenger seat. Why aren't you guys at football practice? I said, still keeping my face angled away from him. Didn't you hear? We got the day off because of the ass-kicking we gave Union on Friday. Dustin and Drew, who must have been kind of paying attention to Heath and me after all, did a couple of very oaky woohoo and yeah yells from inside the truck. Uh-oh. No, I must have missed the announcement. I've been busy today, you know. Big geometry test tomorrow. I tried to sound normal and nonchalant. Then I coughed and added, plus I'm getting a crappy cold. So really, are you pissed or something? Like, did Kayla say some shit about the party? You know I didn't really cheat on you. Huh? Kayla had not said one solitary word about Heath cheating on me. Like a moron, I forgot, okay, temporarily, about my new mark. My head snapped up around so I could glare at him. What did you do, Heath? Zoe, you know I wouldn't. But his innocent act and his excuses faded into an open-mouthed look of shock when he caught sight of my mark. What the? He started to say, but I cut him off. Shh! I jerked my head in the direction of the still clueless Dustin and Drew, who were now singing at the top of their totally tone-deaf lungs to the latest Toby Keith CD. His eyes were still wide in shock, but he lowered his voice. Is that some kind of crazy makeup thing you're doing for drama class? No, it's not. But you can't be marked. We're going out. We are not going out. And just like that, my semi-reprieve from coughing ended. I practically doubled over, hacking a seriously nasty phlegmy cough. Hey, Zoe, Dustin called from the cab. You gotta lay off those cigarettes. Yeah, you sound like you're gonna cough up a lung or something. Dude, leave her alone. You didn't know. You know she don't smoke. She's a vampire. Great. Wonderful. Heath, with his usual total and complete lack of anything resembling good sense, thought he was actually standing up for me as he yelled at his friends, who instantly stuck their heads out of the open windows and gawked at me like I was a science experiment. Well, shit. Zoe's a fucking freak, Drew said. Drew's intense words made the anger that had just been simmering somewhere inside my chest ever since Kayla had cringed from me bubbling up and boil over. Ignoring the pain the sun caused me, I stared Drew right in his meeting his eyes. Shut the hell up. I've had a really bad day, and I do not need this crap from you. I paused to look from the now wide-eyed and silent Drew to Dustin and added, or you. And as I kept contact with Dustin, I realized something. Something that was weird and shocking and excited me. Dustin looked scared, really scared. I glared back at Drew, and he looked scared too, and then I felt it. A tingling sensation that crawled over my skin and made my new mark burn. Power. I felt power. So, what the fuck? Heath's voice broke my attention and pulled my gaze from the brothers. We're out of here, Dustin said, throwing the truck in gear and stepping on the gas. The pickup lurched forward, causing Heath to lose his balance and slide, with a windmill of arms flying beer onto the blacktop of the parking lot. Automatically, I rushed forward. Are you okay? Heath was on his hands and knees, and I bent down to help him on his feet. Then I smelled it. Something smelled amazing, hot and sweet and delicious. Was Heath wearing new cologne? One of those weird pheromone things that are supposed to attract women, like a big genetically engineered bug zapper? I didn't realize how close I was to him until he stood straight and our bodies were almost pressed together. He looked down at me and question in his eyes. I didn't back away from him. I should have. I would have before, but not now. Not today. So? He said softly in a voice deep and husky. You smell really good. I couldn't stop myself from saying. My heart was pounding so loud that I could hear its echo in my throbbing temples. Zoe, I've really missed you. We need to get back together. You know I love you. He reached up to touch my face, and both of us noticed the blood that smeared the palm of his hand. Ah, shit. I guess I. His voice closed off when he glanced at my face. I could only imagine what I must look like with all my face all white, my new bark blazing, outlined in sapphire blue, and my eyes staring at the cold blood in his hand. I couldn't move. I couldn't look away. I want. I whispered. I want. What did I want? I couldn't put it into words. No, that wasn't it. I wouldn't put it into words. Wouldn't say out loud the overwhelming surge of desire that was trying to drown me. And it wasn't because Heath was standing so near. He'd been close to me before. Hell, we'd been making out for a year, but he never made me feel like this. Nothing ever did. I bit my lip and moaned. The pickup truck squealed to a halt, fishtailing beside us. Drew jumped out and grabbed Heath around the waist and jerked him back into the cab of the truck. Knock it off! I'm talking to Zoe. He tried to struggle against Drew, but the kid was Broken Arrow's senior linebacker and truly ginormous. Dustin reached around and slammed the door to the truck. Leave him alone, you freak! Drew yelled at me as Dustin floored the truck, and at this time, they really did speed off. I got into my bug. My hands were shaking so hard. I had tried 3 times before I got the engine to start. Just get home, I said. Just get home. I said the words over and over between the wrenching coughs as I drove. I wouldn't think about what just happened. I could not think about what just happened. The drive home took 15 minutes, but it seemed to pass in a blink of an eye. Too soon I was sitting in the driveway, trying to get ready for the scene I knew, sure as lightning follows thunder, was waiting inside for me. Why had I been so eager to get here? I suppose I hadn't technically been all that eager. I suppose I'd just been escaping for what had happened in the parking lot with Heath. No, I wasn't going to think about that now. Anyway, there was probably some kind of rational explanation for everything. A rational and simple explanation. Dustin and Drew were totally immature beer brains. I hadn't used a creepy new power to intimidate them. They'd just been freaked out that I'd been marked. That was it. I mean, people were scared of vampires. But I'm not a vampire, I said. Then I coughed when I technically remembered how hypnotically beautiful Heath's blood had been, and the rush of desire I felt for it. Not Heath, but Heath's blood. No, no, no. Blood was not beautiful or desirable. I must be in shock. That's it. That had to be. I was in shock and not thinking clearly. Okay. Absently, I touched my forehead. It had stopped burning, but I still felt different. I coughed for the zillionth time. Fine. I wouldn't think about Heath, but I couldn't deny it anymore. I felt different. My skin was ultra sensitive, my chest hurt, and even though I had my cool Maui gem sunglasses on, my eyes kept tearing up painfully. I'm dying, I moaned, and then promptly clamped my lips shut. I might actually be dying. I glanced up at the big brick house that after 3 years still didn't seem like home. Get it over with. Just get it over with. At least my sister wouldn't be home yet, cheerleading practice. Hopefully the troll would be totally hypnotized by his new video game. I might have Mom to myself. Maybe she would understand. Maybe she would know what to do. Oh, hell, I was 16 years old, but I suddenly realized that I wanted nothing as much as I wanted my mom. Please let her understand. I whispered a simple prayer to whatever god or goddess might be listening to me. As usual, I went through the garage. I walked down the hall to my room and dumped my geometry book, purse, and backpack on my bed. Then I took a deep breath and headed a little shakily to find my mom. She was in the family room, curled up on the edge of the couch, sipping a cup of coffee and reading Chicken Soup for a Woman's Soul. She looked so normal, so much like she used to look. Except that she used to read steamy romances and actually wear makeup. Both were things her new husband didn't allow. What a turd. Mom? She didn't look up at me. I swallowed hard. Mama. I used the name I used to call her back in the day before she married John. I need your help. I didn't know whether it was the unexpected mama or if something in my voice touched an old piece of mom intuition she still had somewhere inside her, but her eyes, lifted immediately from the book, were soft and filled with concern. What is it, baby? She began, and then her words seemed to freeze on her lips as her eyes found the mark on my forehead. Oh, God, what have you done now? My heart started to hurt again. Mom, I didn't do anything. This is something that happened to me. Not because of me. It's not my fault. Oh, please, no. She wailed as if she hadn't said a word. What's your father going to say? I wanted to scream. How the hell would any of us knew what my father was going to say? We haven't seen or heard of him for 14 years. but I knew that wouldn't do any good. And it always just made her mad when I reminded her that John was not my real father. I tried a different tactic, one I'd given up on 3 years ago. Mama, please, can you just not tell him? At least for a day or two. Just keep it between the two of us until we, I don't know, get used to it or something? I held my breath. But what would I say? You can't even cover that thing up with makeup. Her lips curled weirdly as she gave the crescent moon a nervous glance. Mom, I didn't mean that I'd stay here while we got used to it. I have to go, you know that. I put a pause while a huge cough made my shoulders shake. The tracker marked me. I have to move to the house tonight or I'm going to get sicker and sicker. And then die. I tried to tell her with my eyes. I couldn't actually say the words. I just want a couple of days before I have to deal with. I broke off so I didn't have to say his name. This time purposefully to make myself cough, which wasn't hard. What would I tell your father? I felt a rush of fear at the panic in her voice. Wasn't she the mom? Wasn't she supposed to have the answers instead of the questions? Just tell him that I'm spending the next couple of days at Kayla's house because we have a big biology project due. I watched my mom's eyes change. The concern faded from them and was replaced by hardness that I recognized all too well. So you're saying you want me to lie to him? No, Mom. What I'm saying is that I want you for once to put what I need before what he wants. I want you to be my mom, to help him pack, to help me pack and drive me to this new school because I'm scared and sick and I don't know if I can do this by myself. I finished in a rush, breathing hard and coughing into my hand. I wasn't aware that I stopped being your mom, she said coldly. She made me feel even more tired than Kayla had. I sighed. I think that's the problem, Mom. You don't care enough to be aware of it. You haven't cared about anything since John. You married him. Her eyes narrowed at me. I don't know how you can be so selfish. Don't you realize all he's done for us? Because of him, I quit that awful job at Dillard's. Because of him, we don't have to worry about money, and we have this big, beautiful house. Because of him, we have security and a bright future. I'd heard these words so often, I could have recited them with her. It was at this point in our non-conversations that I usually apologize and went back to my room. But today, I couldn't apologize. Today was different. Everything was different. No, Mother. The truth is that because of him, you haven't paid attention to your kids for 3 years. Did you know that your oldest daughter has screwed half the football team? Do you know what nasty, bloody video games Kevin keeps hidden from you? No, of course you don't. The two of them act happy and pretend like John and the whole damn make-believe family thing so you can smile at them and pray for them and let them do whatever. And me? You think I'm the bad one because I don't pretend? Because I'm honest? You know what? I'm so sick of my life that I'm glad the tracker marked me. They call the vampire school the house of night, but it can't be any darker than this perfect home. Before I could cry or scream, I whirled around and stalked back to my bedroom, slamming the door behind me. I wish I could hate her. I wish I could hate all of them. Through the thin walls, I could hear her making an hysterical call to John. There was no doubt that he'd rush home to deal with me. The problem. Instead of sitting on the bed and crying like I was tempted to, I emptied the school crap out of my backpack. Like I needed where I was going. They probably don't even have normal classes. They probably have classes like ripping people's throats out 101 and an intro to how to see in the dark. Whatever. No matter what my mom did or didn't do, I couldn't stay here. I had to leave. So what did I need to take with me? My two favorite pairs of jeans, besides what I had on. A couple of black t-shirts. I mean, what else do vampires wear? Plus, they are slimming. I almost passed on my cute aqua-colored sparkly cami, but all that black was about to make me more depressed, so I included it. Then stuffed tons of bras, thongs, and hair and makeup and things in the side pouch. I almost left my stuffed animal, Otis the shish. Couldn't say fish when I was 2, on my pillow. But, well, vampire or not, I didn't think I could sleep very well without him, so I tucked him gently into the backpack. Then I heard the knock on my door, and its voice called me out of my room. What? I yelled, then convulsed in a bout of nasty coughing. Zoe, your mother and I need to speak with you. Great. I patted Otis the shish. Otis, this sucks. I squared my shoulders, coughed again, and went out to face the enemy. Chapter 3. At first glance, my step-loser, John Heifer, appears to be an okay guy, even normal. Yes, that's really his last name, and sadly, it is now my mom's last name. She's Mrs. Heifer. Can you believe it? When he and my mom started dating, I actually overheard some of my friends calling him handsome and charming at first. Of course, now Mom has a whole new group of friends. Ones Mr. Handsome and Charming thinks are more appropriate than the group of fun single women she used to hang with. I never liked him. Really. I'm not just saying that because I can't stand him now. From the first day I met him, the only thing I saw was one thing: a fake. He fakes being a nice guy. He fakes being a good husband. He even fakes being a good father. He looks like every other dad age guy. He has dark hair, skinny chicken legs, and is getting a gut. His eyes are like his soul, a washed out, cold, brownish color. I walked into the family room to find him standing by the couch. My mother was crumpled near the end of it, clutching his hand. Her eyes were already red and watery. She was playing hurt, hysterical mother. It's an act she does well. John had begun to attempt to skewer me with his eyes, but my mark distracted him. His face twisted in disgust. Get thee behind me, Satan, he quoted in what I like to think of his sermon voice. I sighed. It's not Satan, it's just me. Now is not time for sarcasm, Zoe, Mom said. I'll handle this, hun, the step loser said, patting her shoulder absently before he turned his attention back to me. I told you that your bad behavior and your attitude problem would catch up with you. I'm not even surprised it happened this soon. I shook my head as I expected this. I really expected this, and still, it was a shock. The entire world knew that there was nothing anyone could do to bring on the change. The whole, if you get bit by a vampire, you'll die and become one thing is strictly fiction. Scientists have been trying to figure out what causes the sequence of physical events that led to vampirism for years, hoping that if they figured it out, they could cure it. Or at least invent a vaccine to help fight against it. So far, no such luck. But now John Heffer, my step loser, I suddenly discovered that bad teenage behavior, specifically my bad behavior, which mostly consisted of an occasional lie, some pissed off thoughts, and a smart ass comments directed primarily against my parents, and maybe some semi harmless lust for Ashton Kutcher. Sad to say, he likes older women. Actually brought about this physical reaction in my body. Well, hell, who knew? This wasn't something I caused, I finally managed to say. This wasn't done because of me. It was done to me. Every scientist on the planet agrees with that. Scientists are not all knowing. They are not men of God. I stared at him. He was an elder of the people of faith, a position he was oh so proud of. It was one of the reasons Mom had been attracted to him, a strictly logical level. I could understand why. Being an elder meant the man was successful. He had the right job, a nice house, perfect family. He was supposed to do the right things and believe the right way. On paper, he should have been a great choice for a new husband and our father. Too bad the paper wouldn't have shown the full story. And now, predictably, he was going to play elder card and throw it in my face. I would bet my cool new Steve Madden flats that I irritated God as much as it annoyed me. I tried again. We studied this in AP biology. It's a physiological reaction that takes place in some teenagers' bodies as their hormone level rise. I paused, thinking really hard and totally proud of myself for remembering something I learned last semester. In certain people, the hormones trigger something or other in the harder I remembered, a junk DNA strand, which starts the whole change. I smiled, not really at John, but because I was thrilled at my ability to recall stuff from a unit we'd done 4 months ago. I knew the smile was a mistake when I saw the familiar clenching of his jaw. God's knowledge surpasses science, and it's blasphemous for you to say otherwise, young lady. I never said scientists are smarter than God. I threw up my hands and tried to stifle a cough. I'm just trying to explain this to you. I don't need to have anything explained to me by a 16-year-old. Well, he was wearing those really bad pants and that awful shirt. Clearly, he did need some things explained to him by a teenager, but I didn't think it was the right time to mention his unfortunate and obvious fashion impairment. But John, honey, what are we going to do about her? What will the neighbors say? Her face paled even more and stifled a little sob. What will people say at the meeting on Sunday? His eyes narrowed when I opened my mouth and interrupted before I could speak. We are going to do what any family should do. We're going to give this to God. They were sending me to a convent? Unfortunately, I had to deal with another round of coughing, so he kept right on talking. We are also going to call Dr. Asher. He'll know how to calm the situation. Wonderful. Fabulous. He's calling in our family shrink, the incredibly expressionless man. Perfect. Linda, call Dr. Asher's emergency number, and then I think it would be wise to activate the prayer phone tree. Make sure the other elders know that they are to gather here. My mom nodded and started to get up, but her words that burst from my mouth made her flop back on the couch. What? Your answer is to call a shrink who is totally clueless about teenagers and get all those uptight elders over here? Like they would even begin to try and understand? No. Don't you get it? I have to leave. Tonight. See? This will get worse if I don't get around the... Why was it so hard to say vampires? Because it sounded so foreign, so final, and a part of me admitted so fantastic. I have to get to the house tonight. Mom jumped up for a second. I thought she was actually going to save me. Then John put his arm around her shoulders possessively. She looked up at him, and when she looked back, her eyes seemed almost sorry, but her words reflected what John wanted her to say. Zoe, surely it wouldn't hurt anything if you spent just tonight at home? Of course it wouldn't, John said to her. I'm sure Dr. Asher will see the need for a house visit. With him here, she'll be perfectly fine. He patted her shoulder and pretended to be caring, but instead of sweet, he sounded slimy. I looked from him to my mom. They weren't going to let me leave. Not tonight, and maybe not ever, or at least not until I had been hauled out by paramedics. I suddenly understood that it wasn't just about this mark that my life had been totally changed. It was about control. If they let me go, somehow they'd lose. In my mom's case, I like to think that she was afraid of losing me. I knew what John didn't want to lose. He didn't want to lose that precious authority and the illusion that we were the perfect little family. As my mom had already said, what would the neighbors think? What would the people think at the meeting on Sunday? John had preserved the illusion. And if that meant allowing me to get really, really sick, well then, that was the price he was willing to pay. I wasn't willing to pay it, though. I guess it was time I took things into my own hands. After all, they were well manicured. Fine, I said. Call Dr. Asher. Start the prayer phone tree. But do you mind if I go lay down until everyone else gets here? I coughed again for good measure. Of course not, honey, Mom said, looking obviously relieved. A little rest will probably make you feel better. Then she moved away from John's possessive arm. She smiled and hugged me. Would you like me to get you some NyQuil? No, I'll be fine, I said, clinging to her for just a second, wishing so damn hard that it was 3 years ago and she was still mine, still on my side. Then I took a deep breath and stepped back. I'll be fine, I repeated. She looked at me and nodded, telling me she was sorry the only way she could with her eyes. I turned away from her and started to retreat to my bedroom. To my back, the step loser said, and why don't you do us a small favor and see if you can find some powder or something to cover up that thing on your forehead? I didn't even pause. I just kept walking, and I wouldn't cry. I'm going to remember this, I told myself sternly. I'm going to remember how awful they made me feel today. I'm scared and alone, and whatever else is going to happen to me, I'm going to remember that nothing could be as bad as being stuck here. Nothing. Alright, guys, I'm going to stop at chapter 3. I'm probably going to be reading about 3 chapters per video, depending on how much time I have. But so far, I feel like, I like the story, of course. I've already read it. It's been a while, so I didn't actually remember this part. But, hey, I'm going to continue with my next video with chapter 4. And it's going to be awesome. Alright, you guys. Positive energy. I love y'all. Y'all have a good day.